One of the things I've discovered is that many people who are creating community, they may call it something else, like a club or an association, they don't recognize that there is a boundary or they're in denial that they have a boundary. And I wrote about this in the book. At one point, I was invited to New York City because there was a group of spiritual leaders that had an association and they invited me to participate and they wanted to grow it. And I was very confused when I was there about who should be in this group, who should be invited, who is it tailored for, and that kind of thing. And when I asked about that, they said, oh, no, anybody can be in this group. I thought, well, that's just obviously not true, right? This is a room of very highly educated, many cases, spiritual leaders, really involved in the national, international scene about spiritual growth. Obviously, not everybody is supposed to be in this group. So I asked, well, I'm curious, was there ever a time that somebody was asked to leave? And they said, oh, yes. And it turns out sometime before there had been somebody in the group that was advocating polyamorous marriages. And that was too radical for this group. And so they were asked to leave. And I asked, well, who asked them to leave? Because what that would tell me is who had the authority to ask someone to leave. And they told me. And I said, well, it sounds like there is a boundary. There is a standard about who can be here. And it sounds like you do have people who will remove somebody if they're not a good fit. And that really gave them pause. And up until that moment, the people who had asked that person to leave had considered themselves not actually a leader, but just a facilitator. But then I revealed, well, actually, you wield some authority and you do have a standard and you step in when that standard needs to be held. And none of that is bad. It was just curious to me that they just wanted to believe that none of that was in place when it had been in place from what I could tell for years. And it started a new conversation then. Well, then who do they want to invite in and how do they hold the standard?
So this leads into another concept that you talk about, which is gatekeep and the role of gatekeepers. Can you explain what a gatekeeper is and what their role is?
Yeah, well, if we have a boundary, then someone needs to enforce it. And gatekeepers are amongst the people who can say, no, you're not a good fit now. For example, you're a beloved spouse of a firefighter, but you're not a firefighter. So this event or these events or this time is not for you. We will have other events for you. But the more important role of the gatekeeper is to help visitors cross the gate into the community. I visited many, many churches and a number of spiritual denominations have asked me to help them. And many of them wring their hands because young families aren't joining. And so I asked, well, when someone shows up and they're interested, who's helping them become integrated into the community of the church? And often, they don't know. And if we don't know as leaders of a community who's going to help a visitor cross the boundary inside, then goodness knows the visitor's not going to know. And we shouldn't be surprised that they're confused. Well, then how do I get in? Who's going to make the invitation? Who's going to spend the time? Who's going to explain how the events work? Do you work weekly? Is it quarterly? Are there informal events? Do you have to have a certain credential? Do you have to sign up in time? Like, they don't even know. So if you want to grow your community, if you want to keep it strong, you need to understand, well, who are these people? There can be several of them that are helping those who do have the right values and are pursuing the right purpose. How do we help them across the boundary to come inside? An example came to my mind where this really failed, Seth. At one point, I joined a mountain sports group here in California because I'm a mountain sports enthusiast. And this club had been around or has been around since the 1930s. And I was a new father and was looking to join a club. And as my family got older, we would participate. And so they said, well, you can visit our lodge up in the Tahoe. And so I drove 4 hours through the snow to get there. And when I showed up, I was told there would be a member there that would show me around and orient me. So I, drove 4 hours through the snow, unloaded my car, made my way through the snow up to this giant cabin, 3-story cabin. And I came in and in the atrium, I brushed off the snow. And then this member opened the door, the interior door. And her first words to me were, boots don't go there. They go downstairs. They ostensibly wanted new members. I wanted to get involved in a club for mountain sports. I had driven 4 hours. Nobody oriented me on the rules, the protocols, the traditions. And the first thing she said to me was that I was doing it wrong. Does that sound like a club that knows who their gatekeepers are and the role of the gatekeeper? How are they going to help people come inside if the first thing new members hear after driving for 4 hours in a snowstorm is, you're doing it wrong? They have no clue how their gatekeepers work.
So as I'm picturing gatekeepers and you're talking about this, I'm picturing it less as like a nightclub bouncer who's there to keep people out and more, I actually got the mental image of the mythical boatman that helps people cross the river Styx. when they
Absolutely.
die in Greek mythology, right? It's the
Yeah. And there may be times where you need the bouncer, but I don't see that very often because if someone doesn't fit with the values and purpose, they usually don't want to invest to get in.
so there's a fair amount of self-selection. There is a fair amount of people recognizing, for example, one of the communities I'm involved with is Podcast Movement, which is a conference and group of people who are all podcasters. And most people kind of get, all right, I need to either have a podcast or be thinking about a podcast before I'm going to be part of this podcaster community. And so there isn't a real need to sort of throw people out because they don't have a podcast, because they just they get it. They know whether they belong or not.
But that's a good example, Seth. It could be that I want to sell microphones, right? Or I want to build my affiliate program that sells microphones. And so I show up at a podcasting conference and I have no interest in creating a podcast and understand how distribution works or understanding trends and graphics. I just want to build a list of microphone buyers. At some point, it's going to be clear I'm not contributing to the conversation. In fact, I could be distracting from it because I'm more interested in selling microphones. And so at some point, it may be important for a gatekeeper to explain to me, it's great that you sell microphones. It's great that podcasters buy it. This is not the event for you. This is not the right space for you now.